I see these people with these pins that say WWJD. When I ask them what it's about, they say, what would Jesus do? Well, a lot of people believe in Jesus, but they're not ready to take the commands of Jesus seriously. They're not ready to live out those red letters of the Bible, those words of Jesus, which call upon us to respond to the poor sacrificially, to be a voice for the oppressed, to live out our lives without reservations, to help those who are in need. To do what Jesus would do is crucial. That's what it means to be a Christian. That's what this program is about.
Welcome to Red Letter Christianity. I'm Shane Claiborne. This is my buddy Tony Campolo. And on this show, we are committed to asking the question, what if Jesus really meant the stuff he said? And what if we lived as if he did? And today I'm excited about our show because we're going to be talking about money a little bit and economics. And like over and over in the Gospels, Jesus is talking about money. He's talking about day laborers and wages and the rich and the poor and the world that he lives in. And it's eerie sometimes how much our world reflects the inequality that Jesus also knew.
He started his ministry in the 4th chapter of Luke by declaring the Jubilee, which was really a new economic order in which the poor would be fed, the prisoners set free, a whole new social order in which justice would pervade the social order.
And there's that beautiful place that says that God casts the mighty from their thrones and raises the lowly, fills the hungry with good things, and sends the rich away empty.
That scares me.
Almost, it looks a little different.
It scares me because by standards of the world, I do live a rich life. And that scares the daylights out of me because I can't deny that that's there and that the scripture speaks to that very, very important point. We got a guest today.
Yeah, a guy named Peter Greer, and he's got a really interesting story. But what's also fun is that we've had this friendship going, but we have a really unique way that we follow Jesus in light of the economic stuff. I mean, he is creating jobs all over the world and creating ways for folks to financially support their families. So at one point we were actually invited by the American Enterprise Institute, which is, it's a big word, but they've said they're the think tank for American capitalism. So they put Peter and I together and they're like, we want to debate, throw down, cage match, you know, and they didn't know that we were friends, but they said, was Jesus a communist or a capitalist? Go.
Yeah, there you go.
It was a fun conversation. We're going to have that conversation together in just a minute here.
It's going to be a good interview, and actually, the good news is we got a little video we can show that gives you some idea about what his organization is actually accomplishing. The organization is Hope International. Hope International. He's based out there in Lancaster County in Pennsylvania, out there in the Mennonite country, and it's in that ethos that he began to say, can we make capitalism work for the good of God's kingdom? So let's take this video in for just a moment.
Les matins finis, Jésus se trouva sur une plage. Et les disciples ne savaient pas qu'ils étaient. Les enfants n'avaient rien. Les disciples ne savaient pas que c'était lui. Il leur dit, les enfants n'avez-vous rien à manger? Il lui répondit,
il lui dit la troisième fois, Simon, as-tu de l'amour pour moi? Pierre fit adresser des Seigneur, tu sais tout, tu sais que j'ai de l'amour pour toi. Jésus lui dit, nourris mes brebis. Je m'appelle Jolie Yoshi Maudila, je travaille comme chargé de prêt chez Hope RDC.
The loan officer is the one who goes and is in touch with the clients.
Chaque fois quand je m'en vais au travail, d'abord j'ai la compassion en moi. C'est cette compassion-là, cet amour-là qui m'attire vers le travail.
In Kinshasa, poverty is a big problem. You can see and feel the smell of poverty. There is many signs around.
Some of them will say, oh, I'm doomed to die. I don't see any future for myself. I don't see my hope. I don't see where I'm going.
Without faith, there is no hope. So there is a big place for evangelism now.
Hope International ne concerne pas seulement l'aspect physique du client, mais aussi l'aspect spirituel de la personne.
Kombo nanga mama Léonie, naza bana mine. Nazalaki na bade toloba, nazalaki na fond moko ya 10,000.
People really see tangible acts of love through Hope staff, and they see Jesus through that.
En tout cas, opa yambaki ngai vraiment lokwa mutu oyo, apesa ngai valeur ngai.
You are bringing something that they need right now, and then they ask you, why are you doing this? I'm a Christian. It's because of the love of Christ which pushes me to come to you.
Je suis toujours heureux lorsque je vois les clients avec lesquels nous travaillons sont en train de comprendre la parole de Dieu et la mettre en pratique.
En tout cas, na lolenge ya mokristu ekolaki, en tout cas napesi merci mingi na Hope po tozalaki lokola ba orphelin, de père et de mère, alors tomonaki lokola papa yaki po asunga bana na ye na oye azalaki nango lokola neti na lutte contre la pauvreté.
We are bringing the message of the gospel within what people need. It's just a holistic approach.
People in this country, they have their own hopes, their own dreams.
This is an opportunity to show what Christianity really is.
Hope International touche le cœur et transforme des vies.
We got a great guest for you, Peter Greer, Hope International. This is an organization that's trying to help poor people in third world countries start small businesses and cottage industries that they can own and run themselves. Because in the end, we all know there's only one way to eliminate poverty. I don't care whether you're a communist or a capitalist. If you don't create jobs, nobody escapes from poverty. And Hope International is into helping people to create jobs and to earn their way out of poverty through hard labor, through ingenuity, and through entrepreneurship.
You know, that debate we had, Peter, I think was ended up pretty anticlimactic for the folks that wanted some fireworks, because we actually found that, I mean, you went to Harvard, you know the business world, you've studied economics, you're smart as anything, and like, you've used all of that to try to do something redemptive in the world to end and alleviate poverty and spread God's love. Like, tell us what it's looked like. Well, first tell us, was Jesus a communist or capitalist?
I don't think we answered that question at the debate. I think the short answer is neither.
I think we said nothing that ends in ist.
Yeah,
Jesus
right.
loves people. And so, yeah.
That's right. And we know that Jesus calls us to care for the poor. You cannot read the red letters and not realize that this is a God who cares for the poor so much that he became poor.
How did you get into this?
Yeah, so for me, it was really a desire growing up to be involved in missions, but I did not see a place for me. I always was interested in business and entrepreneurship, and then on the side, not on the side, but also had this interest to live wholly for Jesus. And growing up, I saw two models. You could either be a doctor overseas or you could be some sort of a church planner. And so I didn't see a place for me with my skill set. And all that changed when I was studying in Russia and had a time to have lunch with an individual that described this tool called micro-enterprise development. And that tool might not, evoke emotion, but for me, it was the perfect mixing of who I believe God created me to be with this very practical tool that can make a difference in extreme poverty. And so from that moment, I really have just been captivated by this concept.
You used really big words there.
Yeah,
break down a little bit,
hey,
like
whoa.
what missional economics kind of looks like how that fleshed out.
Sure. And just to take one step back, I was thinking about my last trip to Haiti. I know, Tony, you've been doing a lot in Haiti. And I was thinking about this one community that we visited, and I was with a small group of people, and as we were getting ready to leave after meeting with some micro entrepreneurs, these people that have these small businesses, one of the individuals in the back of the bus had brought a bag of candy and started throwing candy out the window. And you know what happened, right? chaos.
Right.
This good intention, this heart that says, I want to make a difference for the poor. I want to give what I have, and I have candy, and so I'm going to give it away. What happened was absolute pandemonium as the big kids pushed the little ones over, as people just that at one point had been hardworking were reduced to a level of begging. And it just was so clear to me that sometimes our good intentions, our desire to give and our desire to share can actually hurt the people that we're trying to help. I think this very different approach that says even though you might be born in poverty does not mean you are worthless. It does not mean you do not have skills, and it does not mean that you do not have incredible abilities.
How does Hope International make this work?
So we start with a premise that says no more pity. No more pity for the poor. We want to develop real partnerships. And the way that that starts is by going into communities and not saying what don't you have, but says what do you have. And oftentimes there are mothers that want to take care of their kids, and that's enough. And so we work with that mother that says, I would like my kids to be in school. I don't want to be dependent on someone throwing an old smelly fish on my doorstep if you can help me start a fishing business. And so we go in and provide training, we provide savings, we provide access to capital so that people can
Access to capital, what does that mean?
What that practically means, again, just using the fishing analogy, that if someone has the knowledge, knows how to fish, and they don't have a fishing rod, that knowledge doesn't do a whole lot of good. So we go in and provide access to maybe $50, maybe $100, maybe $200.
Do they pay these things back, or are they gifts?
Absolutely. I remember being one.
Absolutely what?
They repay these.
So these are loans that you make?
Yes.
And
yes.
the people pay back the loans when they start earning money?
They do. And I remember being with one woman that repaid her final loan, said, I don't need your services anymore because I'm not poor anymore. You don't get that level of dignity. You don't get shoulders back when you're constantly reducing people to elements of handouts. And
hey,
so
tell us some of the real creative businesses or jobs or ways, because I think some of the ways we have to think is, are you getting, chickens for a family so they can, sell eggs? Are you like what are they making bracelets? Or is it as diverse as the people are?
Give us 3 or 4 examples.
The great thing about this work is that we're not coming in with the ideas. We're not coming in saying these are the 3 business ideas. You've got to be a chicken farmer. You've got to be a brick maker. Maybe you're a great brick maker. Maybe you're a great chicken farmer. We don't know. So we enable the local communities, the individuals in the communities to make those determinations. And so you get groups of people that are in together, and they don't have to convince us as a group of outsiders that their business is going to work. They have to convince people that are living within that community. And so there are many individuals. I do think of an entrepreneur that started with a simple shop. They recognized there was no one who was selling basic supplies in their community, charcoal, oil, and rice. And so they started the shop, and then they got a little bit more creative and realized that there was a need for shampoo. This woman, her name was Aura. And I remember being in her house, and it looked like a little shack, but you go in and it's a thriving business where she's stirring up her secret recipes. She's making these single service units of shampoo. And the day we were there, she was experimenting with a bubblegum scent shampoo. And, she was so excited. You just saw the joy and light.
Yeah,
I think both of you, actually. I wish I could have brought some back for you guys. But you see that as one element of small production. I think of another woman that was manufacturing peanut butter. I think of another woman that bought a grinding mill and was turning the cassava into the staple ugali. And instead of doing the hand grinding, she now had a grinder that was just working 24/7 for her community, increasing the product.
Well, you lend out this money to these people who are going to be entrepreneurs, and I understand that this is church-based. How does the church figure into this?
Yeah, and so actually before we lend people, the whole microfinance movement, which is the broader umbrella of what we're a part of, we found that you can actually hurt the people you're trying to help. If you are giving debt, if you're giving someone a loan and they have a need today for their kids to be in school and they use that loan or for food for today, they're going to be worse off because they're going to have to repay that with interest.
Sure.
So what we do is we actually start with savings in most of the places that we work. And even the poor, if they're earning $1, we believe they should be giving and they should be saving some of that, no matter how much we make. And I actually think we in the United States can learn a lot about saving and generosity from people that are living in places of extreme poverty, far more generous oftentimes than what we see here. So we start with saving so that individuals have that buffer zone, have that production.
Now, do you do this out of a church, or do you do it just walk into the community? What do you do?
And so the savings is through local churches. We call them the Savings and Credit Association model. That's probably a bad way to describe what it actually looks, but through the local church, we get church volunteers to meet together, and they agree to go through 5 W's as they meet. There are 5 W's of our model. So there's a time every week they agree we're going to meet at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Monday. And there's a time where they're welcomed. There's a time of worship, individuals singing. It's amazing what happens when you reorient yourself, just present your requests and start praising God together. Then there's a time where the Word of God is shared. People read right now the book of John, getting into the radical teachings of Jesus. Then there's a time of work where this facilitation happens of savings and loans. And then there's a wrap up. So you look at 4 of the 5 of those, and it's not what you think of as banking or you think of as business or what you think of as entrepreneurship. 4 of the 5 of those are about relationships and about the hope of Christ that's woven in at the very core of everything that we do.
As you're describing it, I mean, you got your 5 W's and you're very, systematic and everything about it. But the thing is, you're just doing a lot of what the early church did.
That's right.
It says that they shared everything in common, and as people had needs, they gave that money. They put it at the apostles' feet, and it was given out. And one of and then it says there were no needy persons among them. Right. Acts 2 and 4.
Right.
And it's real similar, but you've kind of got new, fresh structures for that. But one of the early church stories was Ananias and Sapphira, right? That held back from the offering and lied to God about it, and they were struck dead. I mean, you see that this matters to God. This idea of community and of people being able to sustain themselves and bear each other's burdens. Right. And it looks a lot like the early church.
Now, does the money that gets lent out come from the savings of the people, or do you guys raise money elsewhere and bring it in? What is it?
Yeah, so the original model at the base level is that individuals are each, real practical example, you get 20 of your friends together, Tony, that agree to meet Monday at 3 o'clock. You get together and you each say, we're going to bring $1. And so the first week, everyone puts $1 on the table. $30 is accumulated, and then that goes to one individual initially as then a loan. And then over the next 30 weeks, everyone gets access to a lump sum of $30. $30 is way more valuable than 30 weeks of $1. You can do things when you have access to a larger amount of capital that you can never do if you're always just having a little bit to scrape by. So that's the model that it primarily works. And Shane, I love that story in Acts 2:4, and I feel like one of the missing pieces in that too is that generosity and that ability to give and to share and to have a field that then can be donated, that required hard work, it required entrepreneurship, it required something to be created so that you can contribute generously to the needs of others. I love what Paul writes. He says, those of you who are stealing should steal no longer, but should work with your hands so that you can generously contribute to the needs of others. And that's really what we're doing. We're saying if we continue to just pump charity, we're stealing the charity from the people that really need it, and we're not allowing people to have the dignity that comes from working with their hands and then being part of the gift of generosity, the gift of contributing to others. And so that's our model starts, but we also do have a number of people that come alongside us as regular contributors and provide then the access to the capital that that we do.
Some people you know, some people you've touched, contribute to Hope International, and out of that fund you supplement what in fact is created in the local village in the way of wealth.
That's right. There becomes opportunities for business ideas after this grassroots where more capital is needed. We all know it takes money to make money. And so there comes a point that additional capital, you need angel investors. And so we become angel investors in entrepreneurs that have the business idea, have the work ethic, have the character, have the faith to become the agents of change in their community, and that's who we partner with.
I told one of my friends that Peter's one of my favorite responsible capitalists, but when I said that, like part of what I was looking at is like you're interrupting a lot of the patterns of inequity that are happening, that even Paul wrote about too. Like Paul says, if the person who will gather won't gather too much, then the one who can only gather little won't have too little. There's enough, for this day our daily bread. And yet, we have such growing disparity between the super rich and super poor. 1% of the world owning over a third of the world's resources. And so I saw this mural that said, every morning we wake up on the wrong side of capitalism. Mm-hmm. And what do you how do you look at the current patterns of the world right now?
Capitalism, as you're talking about it, is working to help the poor, and is a great system. Capitalism in America has been pretty irresponsible over the last couple of years. Right. It's gotten us into a recession, and more people are falling below the poverty level. The wealthy, I mean the JP Morgan banks, the people who got the stimulus money, selfish. How do we break this pattern? Because capitalism will destroy itself if, in fact, we don't have responsible capitalists like you're suggesting and that you are.
Right. One of my primary concerns at this point is that capitalism, it's an economic system. It's not moral or immoral. It's a system that has incredible potential, more potential than anything else to lift the poor out of poverty. Any other system that we know of that's been experimented with, you look at North Korea, South Korea, we know which model is going to work better. The question, though, is how do we get people of faith to realize that it's not just for our own enjoyment? The whole story of Scripture, as we look at the example of Jesus, as we look at what we've been given, it's not just for our own enjoyment, it's for a purpose. And so I think we need more capitalists that are living out the teachings of Jesus. And working for a nonprofit, sometimes I think we don't give enough respect to those individuals that are going into the private sector, that are creating jobs, that are creating wealth, and doing it with a heart that says, I'm doing this so that the kingdom can be advanced. No kind of tier of that. So I think we need more individuals that are so in love with Jesus, but recognize their skill sets are to create wealth. They have this gift. Let's celebrate them. Let's encourage them to go and be living fully for Jesus, but doing it in such a way that we are addressing extreme poverty through job creation, which is the only path. Just real quick, if you look at the statistics, we're living in an incredible moment of history. Despite all the bad news that we see, and despite this growing income inequality that are real issues, I am so excited that since 2005, there have been 70 million people that have gotten out of poverty every single year, according to the Brookings Institute. And this has not been from charity, it's been from entrepreneurship, it's been from open markets.
This scares the daylights out of me. 70 million people escaping from poverty around the world, and here in the United States, more and more people are falling into poverty. So the number of people who are poor here in the United States is increasing in this citadel of capitalism, whereas capitalism is working brilliantly in third world countries, creating, as you pointed out, 70 million jobs. I mean, that's incredible. Something's wrong in the United States. And I think what you said was wonderful. We need more young men and women majoring in business, going into the business world, bringing their expertise into that capitalistic system and saying it's going to be capitalism with a conscience. Because I see capitalism as being devoid of conscience right now, and I think most young people watching this show are saying Wall Street, the banking system, they are destroying this country and they're creating poverty even as their elite leaders are becoming multi-billionaires.
Well, and you have people that are making hundreds of times more than their workers, and so I saw a study that said in the 1960s the average CEO was making over $300 an hour and the average worker was making about $7. And they did that study a couple years ago. The average worker in the U.S. was still making about $7, and the average CEO was making over $1,500 an hour, $1,500 an hour. And I look at that and I go, that's a system gone out of control, and the ways that you're doing it on the side of overseas creating jobs, are they doing enough to interrupt the patterns of the massive inequities right here. Like the best critique of what's wrong is the practice of something better, but it's really wrong, you know. And so, you know, how do you?
Are you looking for young people to work in your organization?
Yeah, absolutely.
You go speak at Harvard Business School now as an alumni, you know.
You know, and it's one of these things. So my area of emphasis and focus is in the international arena, and there are some peculiarities and there are some differences, and these are real issues. And thankfully, there are some incredible examples, both in the U.S. as well as overseas, of people that are charting a different course. And if you're going to follow Jesus, you're going to chart a different course.
And there's a lot of people that are talking about this, and they should be, and they're writing about it. And I know that one of the really popular books has been When Helping Hurts, and our friend Bob Lupton wrote a book called Toxic Charity. Right. Are there other things, like if some folks are watching this, they're like, man, that's more than I can take in a half hour, I want to keep thinking about this, what would you recommend?
Oh man, there are all kinds, and really, I really appreciate the Chalmers Center for Economic Development at Covenant College. I think they're doing some great work, but you're right, Bob Lupton as well. There are more and more, really some secular
you didn't mention Eastern, and that was a disgrace.
Well, I'm not done yet. I'm still, you know, mentioning.
I'm afraid you are, because they just gave you the sign that we got to wrap up this section.
Oh no!
And say you were wonderful, and you could go on for another hour.
I'd love to.
With excitement about how capitalism can rescue the poor in third world countries in the name of Jesus. What more do we need to hear? Buddy, thanks for being here.
Really
thanks for being here.
Thanks. It was a great time with you guys.
If you're a business major in college, don't give up. You can use your skills for the kingdom. Shane, I did want to tell one story. One of the graduates from Eastern University, we have a graduate program, an MBA program, that prepares people to do exactly what Peter Greer was talking about. Yeah. We've graduated scores of students who are working around the world in microeconomic development. One of the students working in Haiti came upon this village where she had years earlier made an investment, provided some consulting help, got these 15 women to start businesses. They were all doing quite well. And she came into the village, and here were the women having their meeting. Walked into the meeting, and they were all sitting there on the floor of this hut, and said to the women, I want to introduce myself. I am the one who made loans available so that you could start your businesses. And this one Haitian woman stood up and said, and I represent a group that paid back your loan with interest. There's it, you know, the pride and the strength of character. We did it ourselves.
Yeah. I like that old saying that says, if you've come to help me, then you're wasting your time. If you're coming because our salvation's bound up in each other's, then let's work together. And we all have got something to work out with that. But you know, as I think about the patterns of economics, we've got a mess on our hands. It's been said that our money says in God we trust, but our economy looks like the 7 deadly sins.
Yeah.
And as God looks down on America, or the world for that matter, it's going like you see these patterns of the last becoming first, the first becoming last. And the teaching of Jesus just couldn't be more clear that we need to have a new way of thinking about economics. We need to live like the lilies and the sparrows. We need to interrupt the patterns of inequity. And I love that story of Zacchaeus, who was a tax collector, right? And he encounters Jesus, and it transforms who he is and how he does economics. He sells half of everything, starts paying back people 4 times what he owed them. So he's turning the whole debt system on its head. And Jesus says, today is the day of salvation. Today, salvation has come to your household. And as you look at that, you think, being a Christian is about falling in love with Jesus. And it's also about learning to live in ways that interrupt the patterns of injustice and inequality in the world. We hope you've enjoyed the show, Red Letter Christianity. Come watch us next time. We'll have another great guest.